Hi kids, George Booth here for what was supposed to be the Dr. Bob Show. However, after skimming around on YouTube, I found out there are just way too many Dr. Bobs. So I'm going with the title of my first book, Wet Dogs Can't Fly, one of a three book group of wet animals, the second one being Wet Cats Can't Golf. The third one, which will be out the 1st of December, is Wet Raccoons Can't Fly. Lots of silly idiot things and lots of stories from my bizarre family, like my, is that my telephone again? That could very well be true. But anyway, that's the story. So we're Wet Dogs Can't Fly, but I'm still going to be talking about Dr. Bob as time goes on. So with that, we'll end for right now. I'll be back in a little bit.
Chapter 1. The City Kid. Out of the blue one day, my alleged parents announced they were electing to relocate the family from our wholesome upper-middle-class neighborhood in the city to a farm they planned to build. At 10 years old, I thought, actually, I didn't think one way or the other until I overheard something about animals, as in livestock. I had a vision of something between Green Acres and Bonanza. I dared not ask too many questions, though. I knew I would soon receive a briefing from Father about his expectations. Whatever those expectations were, I would be admonished about having a good attitude. A good attitude was mandatory at all times, especially for things that did not interest you or you simply hated and loathed. At our initial family meeting, fueled by an entire pitcher of martinis, a lengthy to-do list was presented. As the old man droned on, my ear picked up at mention of my name followed by, enroll him in riding lessons. Let's include trick riding and barrel racing. And of course, we'll keep him busy with his chores. What the fuck was this all about? I felt like I'd been broadsided by a 100-pound bag of Purina horse chow. Yes, sir, I remember that shit all too well. I cannot begin to describe the rush of images flashing through my 10-year-old brain. Being in extreme heat, mowing hay, teeth floating, scouring, being gelded, teats, farm for tits, bloating, floundering. The actual move to the country was uneventful. We were presented with an entire farmstead, which included a new house, barns, fences, and animals. The house had a lot of large picture windows that I would learn to dislike intensely, as it was my job to clean them. Weekly, to this day, I'm really good with windows. Guess we were supposed to gather together and look out those picture windows at the frolicking livestock. I received new furniture for my bedroom. Too bad we still had the same old crappy TV. There were lots of cool things the neighboring kids were more than happy to introduce me to. On a farm tour down the road, my new pals and I checked out the calf pen. If you stuck a finger in the face of a calf, they would suck on it like crazy. Pretty cool. Then Ronnie's cousin offered a calf another part of his anatomy. I was shocked. Then they all thought it was so hilarious that I was shocked. It's no big deal. Later I would witness large farm animals impregnating other large farm animals, which was indeed illustrative. I wondered when I would stop being the city kid. On another outing, 4 of us were out with our BB guns, attempting to reduce the small mammal population when we came up on a pond the cows used to drink from. One of the kids abruptly took all his clothes off and jumped in. No, I thought. I'll just sit this one out. We had yet to go through gym class, so running around naked in front of your friends was not the first group activity that popped into my head. I was eventually compelled by peer pressure to participate. It was repeated often that summer. Nothing quite like cooling off in a pond of diluted cow shit. The little town we had moved to had a population of 1,200, with 1 traffic light and 1 cop. The school had all grades, K through 12, in the same building. It was strange to see first graders and 12th grade football players having lunch together. Everybody knew everybody, and the cliques, city for gangs, were a mix of ages. Years later, reunions were held for multiple graduating classes at the same time, just to get decent numbers. The town had a community school calendar that listed everyone's birthday, of all things. It allowed the honoree a chance to visit the sponsors of the calendar for free, things like an ice cream cone at the drugstore. To us, it was pretty cool if your birthday fell on a school day. The town barber, who we will call Wes for this discussion, was about what you might expect. Well known, with a shop that had 2 chairs even though he was the only barber there. He had school-aged kids of his own, which added to his thriving clientele. The one thing we all knew about Wes was his fondness for drink. We guessed he started fairly early in the day, probably around lunchtime. He wore glasses, which tended to slip farther and farther down on his nose based on how much alcohol he had consumed. If you were old enough, his offering for your birthday was simple. You could have a cocktail while getting a haircut. He went into the back room and poured whiskey, bourbon, or whatever he had, into a glass, added a splash of water, and that was it. There you go. Happy birthday, kid. The other thing about Wes was that the more he had to drink, the more he had to say. If you had to get a haircut in a hurry, you needed to get there early, especially on Saturdays when the shop was very busy. Otherwise, Wes was half in the bag and very much appreciated having a captive audience. If you weren't in a hurry, getting your hair cut on a Saturday was an ordeal. The Case Corporation was a manufacturer of farm equipment with a dealership in our town. The symbol of the company was an eagle sitting on a globe of the earth. Our dealer had one, a great big one, about 5 feet tall and made of iron. It was located in the lot of the dealership. As a matter of tradition, the senior class would abscond with the eagle and relocate it to some inappropriate location every Halloween. The tradition went on for years. Eventually, the owner had had enough and moved the eagle to the middle of his front yard, anchored to cement with spotlights on it at night. Wouldn't you know it, it was our year to be absconding when he decided to add the cement. We knew we needed a strategy, so we opted to do it the day after Halloween, thereby lulling the owner into a false sense of well-being and convincing him that he had defeated the marauding thugs. Several days prior to the gig, we decided we needed to scope out this concrete base. The house was on the main road on the east end of town, with a broad drainage ditch in front. Naturally, we embarked on a commando raid. By night, 3 of us eagle thieves crawled down the ditch as close to the bird as possible. The idea was for one of us to crawl up to the bird in the shadow created by the spotlights. The goal was to literally feel up the friggin' bird to determine its method of attachment to the cement. As it turned out, the bolt heads were rounded off so they couldn't be removed. Damn. Foiled again. Obviously, we needed a new plan, and that plan would be a hit and run. Just back a pickup into the ditch, push the eagle over into the bed of the truck, cement and all. So far, so good, right? Indeed. To our shock and surprise, it actually worked. There was a collective pause in the action as our overwhelming disbelief that this harebrained plan actually worked. Actually, it didn't work. The fucking bird was just too heavy. Ever find a TV program that you really like and you start to get addicted and you like the format and the basic plot, and then one day you realize they, bastards, deviated from the original story and decided to go for some in-depth tangent about one of the characters and how they suffered as a child and had trouble in school or some shit, and it detracts from the whole basic premise of the program? Some of it seems like the producers are reacting to pressure from agents who say their actor client is deserving of their own episodes. I mean, the original formula worked for Perry Mason. Paul was always available, and Lieutenant Tragg, the smug bastard, always thought he had the goods on Mason. Your client's going to jail. It worked for Gunsmoke, too. Another very serious series that had the same friggin' story, show after show after show, and everybody was perfectly fine with that. They would never really deviate much at all from the basic storyline. Perry Mason won every case, we all knew, and we were all fine with it. Actually, he did lose one, and everyone hated it. Proof of my observations are programs like Wheel of Fortune. Same damn thing, night after night, week after week, month after month, and year after year. Same fucking program, and they still get good ratings. People like to be able to see the same thing apparently over and over. No variety needed. So, writers and producers out there that think that the way to boost ratings is to screw around with the basic plot, introduce new characters, or make deep examinations of one character or another, or start random romantic interest arcs are idiots. What about soap operas? Dead characters are the only changes. Years without a significant plot change. I once turned to one episode of All My Children. I had watched a different episode 5 years earlier. I thought it looked familiar and wondered if it was a repeat. Nope, it was a current show and I had no problem following the plot line. This part is beyond fucking annoying. Netflix started with a compulsion of stretching series. One story broke down into 10 episodes when really there's only enough content and material for maybe 3 episodes. So the writers write filler episodes where nothing happens except watching the two principal characters sit at a bar talking endless bullshit that has nothing to do with the story. Like, what did you feel like when you got those new dishes? Who gives a yippee fuck? Good thing we can record these things on TiVo so you can fast forward through the stupid episodes that have nothing to do with the central premise of the program.